Catching the big wave. The big wave. Is it totally by accident? Is it a coincidence? Or are there things that you can actually do to position yourself to catch the big wave? Well, my thesis is that you actually can catch the big wave. And we've got some examples in history. We're going to talk about a few of those today. We really, really have an exciting show today. Today, it's all about catching the big break. And I asked this question, Michelle and Mimi, is it totally by coincidence that people can catch the big break, or are there things that we can actually do to position ourselves as startups, as founders, to one day catch that big break and have that tremendous success, which sometimes seems so easy when it comes down to it, but yet it takes so long. We often launch a startup. It's exciting at first, but then it becomes very, very tedious as we work hard to build a great startup. And we're waiting for that moment in time when the startup can take off, when it can just explode in a great way. And does that time ever come? Is there a moment that we can prepare for, or the things that we can do to make that happen? Michelle, Mimi, any thoughts on today's topics? And
Yeah,
yeah,
I love this topic because, I mean, it really begs the question, right? Can you do something, right, to help facilitate, make happen sooner or, sooner rather than later your big break? Or is it purely luck? But it also begs the question, is there any such thing? For me, at least it does, because at least I haven't experienced it, Colin, but is there any such thing as an overnight success? So, yeah, so Colin, I know you've had a lot of businesses. Clearly, you're a very successful entrepreneur. Like, have you ever felt like you were able to plan and catch a big break? Like, is there really something that you can share with us, with the members here in the club? What can we do to, try to find and act on more quickly and more successfully potential breaks? Like a lot of things flood my mind right now. I'm just even thinking about AI. Like everyone says that's the next big thing and that's a big break for everyone. But what would be your advice? And, what are the pitfalls? I think we might have lost him temporarily, but let's delve into this question. Um, is it possible to prepare for a big break? I would have to say, Colin, that it is possible to prepare, but I'm going to say it might be more of a mental thing rather than I'm preparing for a big break that has these exact parameters. What are your thoughts, Colin?
I'll chime in if he's not on.
Yeah.
I think it's some formula that I haven't figured out, but some formula of luck, timing, being prepared, seeking out opportunities, and then it finally comes, hopefully, when you're expecting and ready for it. But like Colin pointed out in his article, everybody has heard somebody say their business is an overnight success. It only took 10 years. So, yeah, I'm curious his thoughts.
Yeah, I
I'm
think,
back. I'm back. I'm
all
back.
right, here
It's
he is.
okay. Don't panic. I was in an elevator. You know how it is, Clubhouse. We're trying to multitask. We're trying to do too many things at once. I think about this whole catching the big break, even in the context of Startup Club. We've gotten to 1 million members and it happened relatively quickly. How did that happen? How did we do that? What do we do to position ourselves early on so we could attract so many members and great speakers? And quite frankly, it becomes a cycle of success. It becomes like almost like a positive tornado where we get one great speaker on, and that brings the audience, and then we get another great speaker and more audience brings another great speaker, and creates that momentum that can occur in a business. But there's a series of decisions that we need to do. There's along the way to make. We need to make a series of decisions. decisions. Sorry, I just came in from Amsterdam last night, and I'm very tired right now. So if I'm a little bit sound a little bit tired, I apologize about that. But we need to make a series of decisions along the way and take actions that can make differences so that we can position ourselves for when that time comes. Let me give you an example here. And there's a gentleman by the name of Joe Foster. He started a company called Reebok. Reebok sold, you may or may not know, for $3.8 billion. It's a sportswear shoe company, globally recognized brand. And he and his brother spent 20 years building this shoe company up to about $9 million in revenue. We're going to move back in time here. It's 1979. And he decides to try to launch in the United States. He partners up with a gentleman named Paul Fireman. And Paul Fireman was the gentleman who ran the U.S. division, or the U.S. company, sorry, for Reebok, and eventually took most of the company over. But he partnered up with Paul Fireman in the United States and launched Reebok there. But in order for him to get the deal with Paul Fireman, he had to apply to a magazine and submit his shoes. Now, he was going for what's called reviews. Okay, old again is new again, right? He needed to get positive reviews so he could get the attention of a distributor. He sent the shoes in, they applied for multiple pairs, and they were hoping to get one 5-star review on Runner's World. And they got 3 separate pairs of shoes, got 5-star reviews. Now, this got the attention of Paul Fireman. And they met in Boston, I believe it was Boston, and actually cut a deal. And they began to sell shoes in the United States. Now, what's interesting is they still hadn't cut it big. It took a little bit more than that, just getting a distributor. What they did next is they identified an opportunity in something called aerobics, and no one had been making women's aerobics shoes. Now, Joe Foster is going to call this going into the white space, going into the space in your company that nobody else is going into, but you could gain a lot of market share from. He calls it going into the white space. And they did that. They launched aerobics shoes, and within 1 year, somebody wore those shoes. Her name was Jane Fonda. And if you remember the aerobics workout videos, those videos were huge. And when she started wearing those aerobic shoes, which, by the way, I asked Joe Foster this. I said, did you pay her $1 million for that? She goes, not only I didn't pay her, she bought the shoes on her own. She paid for her own shoes. She didn't even get a free pair from Reebok. So she buys these shoes, she wears them on television, national television. They turn out to be a phenomenal hit, and this company goes from $9 million in revenue to $900 million in 4.5 years. That was the big break. But what was it that he did to position himself for that big break? I already mentioned one of those things. It was reviews. I mentioned another, which was going into the white space or doing something different than other companies. There were some other things that they did along the way to position themselves. And if you're in the audience and you've caught the big break, we want to hear about it from you. We love having people on stage sharing stories, or if you have a question or you want to ask a question, please raise your hand and come on stage. We also love to follow those people who come on stage, those active members of Startup Club. Michelle and Mimi and I, we love to follow you as well. So please raise your hand, come on stage. This is an interactive discussion about how to catch the big break. What's the secret formula? What is it that these entrepreneurs do over and over and over again? Michelle, I'll let you moderate the show today. Well, not let you. You'll let the other way around. I will let myself
Absolutely.
pull
It's
back because I'm
my
exhausted.
flip.
Thank you.
It's, yes, absolutely. But we're going to keep calling on you, so don't go anywhere.
Yeah, I have a couple
So
good stories, a couple
I know
personal
that you do.
stories of how we caught the big break in a few companies.
So I think thank you, Aquila, for joining the stage. I think it's worth it to, just like have a discussion around what we can do to prepare for these big breaks. And I'm going to say one of them. Let's try to come up with five of them here for our members, and we'll put this in the blog post as well. I'm going to say one is that you are continuously, let's just say, scanning and learning your environment. Okay. So if you know that your inclination or your talents or your network, right? Something, a business that you could get into and, have some success is, let's just say, technology, then we should be constantly learning, surrounding ourselves with people that understand the new technologies, as well as constantly reading. So I think, at the top of that means that you actually identify the kind of opportunities that you're looking for. So I think in the beginning here, I mentioned AI, right? It's on the top of everybody's mind. Many people, let's just say, believe that there's a lot to be had there in terms of opportunities of making money. So we are constantly scanning and learning, but also networking with other people. Sitting in your room or your office by yourself, trying to figure it out. I don't know about you, Colin, or Mimi, or Akila, but that never worked for me. When I find the ideas present themselves, is when I'm actually out interacting with people. So again, it's another one of those use cases or cases where who you surround yourself with really does make a difference. Colin, so I'm going to put that up on the board for the first one. You're networking, one, and you're continuously learning about the opportunity that in the area that you think you can execute on. Colin, thoughts on that and what you've done?
Yeah, and just this whole concept of being different, right? The idea that, if you always just copy, you don't tend to pull ahead. And those companies that can differentiate themselves can sometimes do that. We have a company in our incubator called paw.com, and we do a number of pet products. We pioneered, essentially invented the category of pet rugs, pet memory foam rugs. And we've gotten a lot of attention for that. And we're unique and different. And I know Michelle's helping us out. She works in the incubator as well. And we always try to help companies out where we can. But we've been asked to do Good Morning America because they're unique and different products. We wouldn't have been asked to do Good Morning America if they looked like every other dog bed that came out of a pet store, right? So this idea of going into the white space that Joe Foster talks about or doing something different, we think that's really important in trying to catch the big break. Because again, good things happen and momentum builds a momentum. We came out with these products, these pet rug products. GMA saw that, Good Morning America, and they asked us to come on. Now we've done like 4 or 5 times we've been on Good Morning America. And we just recently, last month, went on QVC because we're the only ones with these products. So again, I think this idea of differentiating yourself and coming out with different products. And I'm going back to that other story again about the reviews. If you can get those top reviews, that can get you the attention. So I guess that's what it's all about, really, to catch the big break. We're trying to get attention. We're trying to get attention of the media, the industry experts, the customers, your distributors. He got the 5-star review. He got the attention of Paul Fireman, who was a distributor in Boston for outdoor camping equipment and whatnot. He was a distributor for that, and so he decided to take on the Reebok brand and distribute that in the United States. He couldn't have got that without those reviews. They couldn't have gotten Jane Fonda to wear those shoes if they hadn't gone into the white space and differentiated themselves. I know I'm being a little bit repetitive here, but I feel like we've got about 4 or 5, 6 concepts right there that as startups, if we can position ourselves, if we can deliver outstanding performance through those top reviews as an example, we can go in the white space and we can gain attention in the media, PR, the industry, customers, distributors. Those are the
Yeah.
things that we can position ourselves to catch the big break.
And, not to be forgotten, just a core principle is just that you are unique in the space. You're addressing a specific need, whether it be an actual life, enabling need, or just something that people want. That's always core too, because right, you can invent the most amazing thing, but if no one needs it, well, then it really didn't matter, Colin. I'm just going to say that. So for our paul.com products, they're very aesthetic and they're very high quality. People were tired of having old, ugly dog beds, for example, in their house. This meets that need. Something I want to show off and not hide, something I want to spend over $100 on. Pretty core. So really defining and understanding the space is key. But without further ado, let's get to our member audiences that have joined here on the stage. Aquilia, we'd love to hear your thoughts or your experience about what you did to catch a big break or what you're doing. Please tell us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm not going to say that it's necessarily a big break, but what worked for me. At one point, I had a online music and art magazine. I started it back in 2012. I had it for about 4 years, and it did well. I started to sell ads for it, but I started to sell ads at a time where, yes, people were on the internet, but selling advertisements on the internet at that time, people weren't really see it, who's really, watching, whatever. Um, but what I did was I did a magazine, like a coming out magazine party. And in my city where I lived, I went downtown and I offered all the really cool shops, and the people that were, really popping and stuff downtown. I offered them a space on a flyer. They paid a certain amount of money to get on this flyer, and in return, they got advertisement through that. Now, I got the venue for free, um, from a really popular Thai restaurant downtown. Certain times of the week, the gentleman would turn his entire restaurant into like, an area where you could have a party, or, they had poetry slams or whatever it was. So I got the venue for free. I found a DJ. It was just really an eclectic mix of my thought process. And I had just put in the chat, you all were asking about certain, ways and stuff to get to your big dream. And I put in meditation. And I put in meditation because when you meditate, you tend to open your mind to other thought patterns, and it opens it bigger. And I think it allows for you to get more clarity. So through meditation, I feel like I got more clarity on what I wanted to do. I was able to hone in on exactly how I wanted to have the magazine party and the type of things that I wanted involved and the things that I wanted to do. And I feel like because I got that clarity, I was able to focus and, go right in and get it done. And it executed it beautifully. And the magazine party was wonderful. Now, yes, I only had it for 4 years, but in that 4 years, I was able to reach other countries. We had readership in Africa, China. It was just, it was amazing. And I feel like if I had kept it until now, I probably would have been really big. But I don't know because I didn't keep it. I only had it for 4 years. But that's just what I wanted to add into the conversation. It might be a little strange, but I think meditation is something that is very useful when you're talking about ideas and trying to focus and things of that nature to help you in business. That's what I want
No,
to say.
yeah, I love that, right? Because I what I hear you saying, and I agree with you, is if your mind is open, right, and receptive, that is also being prepared for a big break. If we're so busy running around and let's just say the minutia and worrying and whatnot, and willing to hear, right, and see opportunities, well, guess what? We're not going to be able to act on them. So I would agree with what you're saying. We really do need to be in that very kind of open mindset and willing to hear other people, even if it's not what we want to hear, or even if it's not what we're, you know, desperately looking for. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and I also think that the hard work that you did by going around to each store, and I mean, you could have just put out a newspaper ad or something like that and announce it, but you actually know you went on the street and you started working it. You started creating that momentum. We want to create a spark, and sparks can lead to fire, which can lead. I mean, I'm talking good fire, which can lead to good things happening, momentum happening within your company, within your startup. How do you get the sparks? You just got to keep lighting the sparks. It's like you ever tried to make a fire from sticks, and you just make it. You keep trying. You keep doing a spark. You keep doing a spark. You keep doing a spark. You keep doing a spark, or from even from rocks, and you do that spark, 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 and eventually it hits. Eventually it connects, and you see it light up very very nicely. So Michelle, do you want to hear another story?
I want to hear a
That's
story.
unbelievable. Like it's just
Yeah,
unbelievable. And again, if you're in the
but
audience, you
don't
want to
make it look
share.
so simple, right?
Oh
Like
no,
the
it's not
truth
simple.
is. Yeah.
So, yeah, if you're in the audience and you want to share your big break, I mean, Akila, that was awesome, and I'm following you for sure. Everybody in this audience should follow you. You're amazing. Keep coming on Startup Club. Keep coming on stage. We love the story and the share around meditation and how it can impact the big break. So again, if you're in the audience, come on stage. That's what it's all about. That's what Clubhouse is all about. It's about a community coming together to share these ideas so that we can learn from each other. So, we had a company. Michelle was actually president of the company when we had sold it to GoDaddy a couple of years ago, called .club. .club was an alternative to .com, .net, .org. And this is going to sound almost like I'm making this up or it's out of a movie or something like that, but I we received our first offer from GoDaddy, and I have to be careful on the particulars here, but we received our first offer on GoDaddy, and myself and Jeff Sass, who was the chief marketing officer, we went for a walk. We often go for walks and talk, and we went for a walk around the block. It's like about a quarter-mile walk, and we started walking around the block, and we were lamenting about. Hold on, hold on. Sorry, guys. Pause.
I think this is a story
Yeah. Okay. So
actually
we just had
about
room
club.
service was just dropping off a gift in my hotel room right now. So
Oh, there you go.
yeah. So it's a whole bottle of wine and fruit and everything. I wish you were here, Michelle, to enjoy it. There's my big break. I just sat in my hotel room and they dropped off a free tray of wine and fruit, and that's pretty cool. So here we are. We get the first offer. It's a pretty good offer for I think it was actually a full price offer. I don't think they even tried to negotiate or whatever. And we go for this walk. We're walking around the block, and I'm saying, for all the companies we've had, I've been involved in 10, 12 startups and a couple public companies and whatnot. And they said, with .club, we just never got the break. We never seemed to get it. It just seemed like we had to work so hard to get every dollar, to get every domain, to get every single sale. I mean, we worked hard. Michelle, Jeff, and I flew to China 13 times, and we went to over 40 countries to promote this micro global product, this brand. And then, and then, you'd never would come to the office. Not a half hour later, we get a phone call from a guy named George Verdugo. And George Verdugo starts talking to us about something called Clubhouse. We had never heard of Clubhouse before this. Well, guess what? There's a gentleman, he said, named, I can't remember his name right now, but a gentleman was purchasing .club names for his identity. John Lee, he got JL.club. He started buying all these other .clubs. And it created a fury. And literally, our sales exploded. Premium sales exploded. We sold like $1 million in premium domains in about 30 days. The company just blew up from one app called Clubhouse. And it happened half hour after we were lamenting that we just couldn't get our big break. Now, if you remember, I told you we received an offer to buy the company. Well, it's something called a material adverse event that companies will often use to reduce the price. Well, we had a material adverse event that was positive. And so we went back and renegotiated the contract to get a higher offer, and we were very successful at doing that and making the sale to GoDaddy. And a lot of clubs use .club. We use startup.club, obviously, and you see a lot of people using .club on Clubhouse, and it did make a big difference. And where you never know, you think that's totally luck. But what is it that Michelle did? What is it that Jeff did? What did it that I did? We traveled to 40 countries. We did what Akila, you talked about, going to all the stores. We did that. We flew all over the world. We just kept slogging it out. And by the way, this was 8 years after the company started. We were complaining that did not get our big break. And a half hour later, we get a phone call, and the company just sort of blows up sales wise. What, like, just to me, that's mind boggling, and it's in the book. I don't know if we talked about that yet, but my icon here, it's a brand new icon on this show for those who've seen me talk on Startup Club. I have a new icon now. I've got the words start, scale, exit, repeat around it. The name of the book is called Start, Scale, Exit, Repeats, and it comes out October 3rd, being published by Forbes. And a story in the chapter is Catching the Big Break, and we chronicle a lot more detail about Joe Foster and his path and his story starting Reebok. And we go into some other stories about catching the big break as well. We also did an article on Forbes, which you can see at the top of the screen right now. You can click on that article. It talks about some detail as to how Joe Foster caught that big break. I could tell you more stories. I mean, it's unbelievable how you take these actions, you run the company the best you possibly can, you do everything you possibly can right, and then good things happen. I know there's luck involved. I absolutely cannot deny the fact that we were lucky they called it Clubhouse, and we were lucky that .club just took off from an app like that. I cannot deny that. But at the same time, we are positioning the products in hundreds of distributors globally. Thankfully, I think they used a company called Namecheap, which happened to feature .club as one of their top domain extensions as well, which is something that we worked for years on to position on Namecheap as well. It didn't happen overnight. It took years to position it. They saw it, they liked it, they loved it. And by the way, we got not Paul, but his business partner calling us up, and they actually bought the domain name from us as well, clubhouse.club. So that was pretty cool. And that's when we got to know the people at Clubhouse, and eventually, to this day, it all was what led us to Michelle and I taking over Startup Club and running it as we do today, and almost 1 million members strong. So you can see how it's all connected.
All right.
It's all connected.
Well, let's add to the list because, there's recurring themes here. So I'm going to just point out a few other ones. You know, so you see this opportunity, you're thinking about it, you're sitting there, you're talking about it with your family and friends. I think knowing that or feeling that and taking it to the next level, we all know this is two different things. So I'm going to add two more things to our list, and that is understanding and knowing how to execute and take a risk. All right. So we see this opportunity where, oh my gosh, I wish I could do that. Or we're the kind of person that, oh my gosh, I'm going to do that. There is the whole element. Again, this is like you're training yourself, you're preparing yourself mentally, financially, your networks, your learnings, everything about how you will be positioned to act upon that idea, act upon that new break, AI, whatever it is. So it's really knowing what you're comfortable with and knowing how also to take, I'm going to say, a calculated risk. Because I don't think anybody wants to take a risk and feel like they're just going to fail. So there is a lot to be said about understanding your tolerance for risk and what risk looks like to you. And, having your network, another key word, so that you can pull together a team or pull together some financing or execute and get a proof of concept. So again, it's easy to set and say, well, I know that's going to be the next break. It's another thing to be able to act on it. So we're going to be saying prepared and that you're able to execute in a way you're comfortable with to try to prove the concept. And I suggest that you try to prove the concept. It might take days, it might take whatever, a year, but there has to be a plan behind that, or else you'll, perhaps just end up wasting a lot of your money or other people's money. So, Colin, when I think of a risk taker, you know what? You're the poster child for me of someone who really knows how to execute on, I'm going to say, let's just say a semi proven concept. I know you do a lot of research and, consult with your network, but how do you get comfortable with taking a risk? And, how do you recommend to people that they execute on it without like losing everything they have? Colin.
I think there's like three questions in one there. I will say that some of the things that I do or I've done in the last 30 years as a serial entrepreneur is really position myself around the next big wave, right? We did that in the 90s around something called dial up internet. That was the slow or narrow band internet when they called it the information superhighway. And we launched an internet provider and became the largest in Canada, took that public. We did that again with software downloading with a company called Two Cows, and later it became also a domain company, and now it's a telecom. We did that with a company called Hostopia, which was a hosting platform. You could host websites. And we began to sell those websites through multiple distribution channels. We did that again with .club when they deregulated the namespace. We've done that with the e-commerce companies like paw.com. We're doing that today with some AI investments in two AI companies right now. And they're very early on, the AI companies. But the fact is, we're positioning ourselves around a wave. We want to catch that wave when it takes off. And sometimes, if you wait till the wave takes off, it's a little bit too late, because it's those companies that catch the wave that are in the position to garner the largest market share. They're the ones who can win when the wave takes off if they position themselves for the wave. You ever see a surfer do that? They don't just have the wave come and jump on it. They position themselves for the wave. They position to stand on that board as the wave's approaching. We had on an author who's one of the top authors, in my opinion. And we had a Harvard dean on a few months ago, and he said that as well. That this author, Jeffrey Moore, who wrote Inside the Tornado and Crossing the Chasm, we had him on this show. You can actually search it out on any podcast network under Serial Entrepreneur Secrets Revealed and search for Jeffrey Moore. And you could just search that on Google if you wanted to pop up the podcast right away. And he talks a lot about this in detail and how he does that. And I listened to his stuff in the 90s and became a student, like essentially a student of his, and began to execute on a number of his strategies. And they worked. They worked really well. But this idea of identifying a wave and positioning yourself around that wave to catch the wave, that can help you with your momentum. Again, it's all about momentum. And then we want to figure out, is the concept scalable and does it have a moat? And these are some concepts that we talk about a lot in the book, Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat. But just the idea of catching the big wave can help you catch your big break as well. I know that's sort of a little cliche-ish there, but the fact is we're going to want to look for those. And there are opportunities around AI and other new technologies. There's a lot of other new technologies. You do have to be careful in that there are some technologies that suffer in what Jeffrey Moore calls a chasm, and some of them never seem to ever get out of that chasm. An example of that one right now is Meta, or the metaverse, which has been in that chasm now for almost 20 years, and has never really been able to break through or break out. But I know there's some signs that it could start to amount to something and become more commercially applicable. But we'll see over the next few years if they can actually make progress in that. But do you position yourself around an industry that can never really even grow? If the fact of the matter is your lake is 2 feet deep and it never, you know, never goes up, how are you going to ever how are you ever going to build a business in a market that's just never taking off? And that can happen to companies as well. But really focusing on the big break, what is it that you've done to catch a big break, the moment in time in your business where you've done something or you've done a series of things, and then one day it just came along and it almost looked so easy from the outside that overnight success just took 10 years. Here in the audience, if you like the topic, please raise your hand. We'd love to follow active members on Startup Club, like we're following Akila now. It's awesome that you came on stage, Akila, and shared your story. We want to hear more from others as well, so please raise your hand, and we'd be happy to have you on stage. Michelle or Mimi, any other
Yeah.
thoughts around this?
I'm going to put out another one here, since we're listing out like the key attributes of, let's just say, preparing and catching that wave. So I don't know, but for me personally, I'm going to say perseverance. Like you really have to persevere. Like it's the long game, right? Although catching the big break almost, when you hear it, right, it implies that, oh my gosh, it just came by and I grabbed it and, I was off to the races. But it's really, really not like that. I'm sure there's cases, Colin, where it is like that, but let's just be honest. Like probably over 99.9% of the time, it is not. So I think it is a frame of mind, like just like anything in life, business and being open, like Akelia said, it is a frame of mind. So really knowing how to manage that with yourself internally, your emotions, with your family, with your friends, with your business colleagues is absolutely critical. You can't burn yourself out. You can't like get down on yourself or other people or mad at other people because they're not seeing your vision. You really have to have what we call that high emotional EQ. And I would say pace yourself for the long haul. Take care of yourself physically and emotionally so that you are prepared, to receive information and act on it and be successful. But I see we have Jam on the stage. Jam, first, thank you for joining us. And yeah, tell us your story, tell us your thoughts. Thank you.
Hey everyone, how are you? I hope you are doing good and happy Friday. Yeah, so actually, why I raised my hand, I'm new entrepreneur. Like I started my corporation like 2 years ago, and from my side, I am like kind of confused situation. I wanted to ask um, some of my scenarios, maybe Colin can help me, or you can advise something good. For example, initially I started very energetically. I got some contracts, and recently again I got some contracts. But my problem is that after earning some good money, my focus is getting diverted. Like I'm immediately feeling that, man, I'm doing good. And then I'm not into getting more into this. Like I don't have that appeal to get more. So, what kind of advice you will give to the entrepreneurs who wanted to focus more and get more out of their like knowledge and out of their business, and especially the newly business, and how they can expand it towards the like heights of the progress.
Well, I can start first and then we'll have Colin chime in. I think if I understand what you're saying correctly, you had an idea, you had an opportunity, you grabbed onto it, but you don't let me put words in your mouth, but it seems like something is telling you that you don't want to pursue it. I mean, just it sounds like you don't have energy around the idea personally. Um, is that what you're saying, Jim?
Yeah, yes, some kind
Yeah,
of feelings when I'm in between of the things. At that time, I feel
yeah.
it like this.
I would say this to you, and I'm not like a psychiatrist or anything like that. I'm just telling you my personal experience. I feel like if when that happens to me, something internally is telling me and letting off some kind of alert. I would say what I would do is you really need to take some time, and really, think about it or meditate about it and talk to some trusted colleagues, right? People you trust, not just people that are going to say things you want them to say, to really explore why you're having that feeling. Because I think the human mind, it lets off these, kind of red flags in sometimes ways that are not like, you know, over the top of your head, like, oh my God, it's not like, oh my gosh, I can't do it. It's just horrible. But I think you really need to listen to yourself and talk to some people that you trust and that can challenge those feelings. Colin.
Yeah, I think that if you believe in an idea, you really believe in it, and you think it's going to be successful, you need to give yourself a little bit of room. I do classes with entrepreneurs, startups at the Alan Levan Center at NSU. And one of the things I recommend that everyone do in a startup is set up stage gates. And it does a few things. By setting up a stage gate, it's really well, I should define it first. It's really a specific and measurable goal of an outcome. So, for instance, within 2 years, I'm going to have 100,000 of revenue, 100 clients, 10 distributors, whatever that stage gate is. And then give yourself the room within that stage gate to achieve that number. Because the fact of the matter is, business doesn't happen instantly. It takes a lot of tenacity, and we're all excited about it in the early stages. We're all very happy with the idea, and often entrepreneurs, I use the parallel of it's almost like a drug. When we first get that idea, and I know I definitely exhibit this behavior. Michelle's seen this many times. You get an idea for something, and we just go all in, and we're so excited, and 2 weeks later, we're like, what the fuck were we thinking about? Is that crazy? Or we not? So the fact of the matter is, once you get past that point, though, and you still strongly believe in your idea, if you set up a stage gate, I think that's important, and that gives you the flexibility that can, if it also supports you with respect to investors and other things, around having that specific target. If you don't hit your target, you either need to pivot or shut it down and move on. So there does become a point, but you're now giving yourself a set point in time in the future of a specific target. I do believe that it takes longer than anyone thinks to launch a startup. It's never as fast as it looks like on the TV or on the movies or on Netflix. You see these movies or series and they all start them up and they look like they did it over a period of like 1 year or 6 months. And the fact of the matter is it may have taken 10 months, 10 years, sorry. And the look at Joe Foster and his brother. It took 19 years to get to $9 million. It took 4 years to get to $900 million. Right? It's going to catch. The momentum's going to build, but we want to build on that momentum one step at a time. We want to continue to build on the momentum, like Akila did with that stores. She went and she worked those stores. If you believe your idea is good and you're convinced it's going to go, don't back down. Just keep putting what you need to into it to make it happen, and the momentum will come. And sometimes that's a belief, that's a leap of faith. It really is on a lot of these business ideas that we do. It's such a leap of faith. Will people actually buy this product? Will people actually do what we're trying to get them to do, or take buy these services, whatever it is? So I'll leave it at that. I don't know if that really answers your question. It's a pretty tough question to answer, right out of the gate. But think of a stage gate. Think about how you can create momentum, and very good luck with your business, and have a little more patience. Stick a little bit longer than you might be comfortable with, because it's never fun. It's always fun when you have the first date with your startup. But when you've been going steady, or you've been married for a while with that startup, the fun does fade, and you got to stick with it, because eventually good things do happen, especially if you're working hard at it.
Yeah,
Excellent.
thank you very much for giving me the answer, and I hope I asked some logical question. It was not a just random word. Thank
No,
you.
not at all. We do appreciate it. And a lot of people get to that stage. I'm just going to add on one thing to what Colin said. It's also critical along the way, different stages, to talk to your friendly customers or your friendly partners. Like, a lot of people gloss over that step. They can just give you, an unlimited insight into, what's really going on and what they like about the product or don't like. All right, Colin, we have about 10 minutes left of our show this week. And I see we have Dr. T on the stage with us. Dr. T, please do share with us your story or ask any questions. The mic's yours. Dr. T. Yeah.
I'm here. Yes. Thank you so much for allowing me on stage. It's so good to see you. I am Dr. T. I am the advocacy warrior for individuals who are differently abled and divinely abled in the community. We are on a trajectory to stop violence, suicide, homelessness, illiteracy, and loneliness, trying to build communities of hope around the world for our differently abled, underserved, and underrepresented populations. Any advice that you all very amazing people could give in reaching out to, we are a nonprofit, but reaching out and sharing our message. We are on national radio and preparing to get on national TV as well. But just here to learn and listen and grow from those of you that have been doing this for quite some time. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. I hope you get an opportunity to go back to one of our episodes we had, I think, 3 weeks ago, with Manny Onum. And he came from Africa, and he was given a pair of shoes. He didn't have shoes when he grew up, and he was given a pair of shoes. And it made all the difference in his life. And he came to America, and years later, he decided to start a charity. And he set out a BHAG of 10 million pairs of shoes. 19 years ago, he set out this BHAG. It was a mountain to climb for his not-for-profit. And he set up base camps along the way. Sort of, what are we going to do in the next 3 years? What are we going to do in the next 1 year? How are we going to achieve this goal? And he was very specific and measurable in his goals and his winning moves. They call them winning moves. What were the winning moves he's going to take the next 12 months? And he talks about how he would do one event and it would lead to another. So, for instance, we saw him speak at a growth conference, Michelle and I said, we're going to have to interview him. So I said, okay, let's interview him. So we interviewed him, sorry, on Serial Entrepreneur Secrets Revealed 3 weeks ago. And again, you'll love his story. He's a phenomenal speaker. I don't think you'll ever hear a better speaker in your life, by the way. Go back and listen to this episode. It's amazing. And he's got a lot of lessons to share for a not-for-profit and how it needs to be run like a startup. It's very cool. And so, yeah, he talks a lot about his story and what he's done. But guess what? He's crossing over 10 million pairs of shoes in October of this year. So I said, okay, this is such a cool story. And I've been writing articles for Forbes now for about 6 months. And I'm going to do an article for him on Forbes. And I just finished the article like 2 days ago. We did an illustration and we're submitting it to Forbes. It's going to publish in September. Again, hear him speak led to him coming on the show, which I also Startup Club also donated $1,000 to his charity as well. And next thing you know, he is coming on our show, and then we're now doing an article for Forbes. I'm just saying, what he says is one thing leads to another, which leads to another. So getting your message out and getting it out to as many people as possible. You just came on stage. I wasn't following you. I'm following you now. I'm following Jam and I'm following Akila. You're not going to catch your big break if you sit in the audience all the time. You came on stage and you told us about your not-for-profit, which sounds absolutely amazing. And it sounds like you're doing great things. But unless you come on stage, unless you let people know about it, no one's going to know it even exists. And I applaud you for doing that just in this one move, in this small, minor, major, just coming on stage and talking about it. And now we're aware of it. And now we're following you. And what good comes from that? It's almost like you manifest your destiny. It's true. It can happen. You can create this momentum. You can make a difference and you can catch that big break. And this charity can take off. Really, really hope you go back and listen to that episode. He is phenomenal. And we hope to have him on again. Maybe when I think it's October 23rd, thereabouts, when he's going to cross over. He's 10 million the pair of shoes. Although he's flying to Africa, he not only does he give them a pair of shoes, but he washes their feet. 10 million feet that are washed by him personally and his 200 employees. And it's just a phenomenal story. They also started a brand new factory and they build shoes in Africa for people all over the world who just cannot afford to own a pair of shoes. And I just think it's such a cool mission, and what he's done and accomplished is amazing. And hopefully you can get some lessons from that.
Excellent. Thank you. I think, Akelia, did you want to say one final thing? I saw you sent something in the chat.
Yes, ma'am, I did. Just really quickly, you said something about, talking with people and stuff, and, in building, I think in building startups and things and business, period, it's all about relationships. And really quickly, I do photography as well. That's my first love. But I follow a lady, and Miss Sarah Petty, she's a fabulous photographer, and she told us about a business model, the boutique model and the shoot and burn model. And the boutique model is all about building relationships with your clients so that when you see these people again a year from now, months from now, whatever the case may be, you guys have created a story through the photography, through the photo shoot. And, she gave us steps. And I realized in that moment, the photographer that I was trying to be, I was doing the boutique model without knowing, but I was becoming a shoot and burn photographer. The point I wanted to make was adding to what you all were saying about some of the ingredients for startups and stuff like that, business models. I think the boutique model is a beautiful model for business because it focuses on creating relationships with your clients, creating relationships with the people that you're trying to do business with. And I think that if you create long lasting businessships, friendships, relationships with people, I think that you will last in business. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you guys so much. Absolutely. We'll definitely take your advice, and I will be looking for that program. Colin, thank you
Yeah, and
so
if it's a
much.
tough one to spell, Manny Ohm. I don't even know how to pronounce his last name, but he's a great speaker. And but if you go to startup.club, there's a blog on it. Mimi, I believe you did a blog on it as well that has the episode, or you can search on Google. Manny Ohm. O. How do you spell it? Ohonome. Mimi,
But
I need your help.
Samaritan's Feet.
Samaritan's Feet. Yeah, but if you search for Manny Ohm, Startup Club, it'll come up right away, and you can listen to the podcast. Because not for profits are a startup as well, and actually we're launching one now. We spent the last 8 months getting approval on a 501c in the United States for it's called Help for Ukraine Club. We have a business in Ukraine, 800 employees with who do IT development services, and the charity is really being set up to support victims of the war in Mykolaiv, Ukraine, which is the city that we have most of our offices and employees located in, which is in the southeastern part of Ukraine, quite close to the front line. And we've had employees who've died, and we have orphans that we're trying to support their education. And we want to make certain that they get well educated, even though their father had passed away in the war. And that's a charity that we set out to start about a year ago, and we are literally getting the final approvals now. It's a startup like any other startup. So, Dr. T, I'll be pinging you for advice as well. So, it's a startup. It's a not for profit, but it's still a startup. And I think we often don't think of not for profits as startups, but we really should. There are millions of not for profits, and there are a lot of lessons we can learn from them, and there's a lot of lessons not for profits can learn from us. Well, this show has been amazing. Again, the community came together, following everyone here on stage. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing everything you shared. Again, I do want to let you know that the book Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat, being published by Forbes, is coming out on October 3rd. 30 years as a serial entrepreneur, 10 years writing the book, and over 200 interviews. And we put this book together, and it really is meant to try to crack the code of what it takes to start, scale, exit, repeat. What is it that serial entrepreneurs do over and over again? And why do they have that repeated success? You think of those one hit wonder bands, think about those other bands like the Beatles and U2 and Queen and uh, t- uh, Taylor. I'm sorry, I'm not as up to date on the more recent ones.
Swift.
Thank you, Taylor Swift. Thank you, and Lady Gaga. And you just think of all these bands and singers who they keep coming up with one hit after another. Well, you can do that with startups as well. There is a formula, there is a code, and we've done our best to crack that code in the book Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat. I don't think that any book has come closer to figuring that out than that book. So that comes out October 3rd. It already hit the bestseller lists on pre-orders, top 10 in Canada, top 20 in the US, just on pre-orders, and not even, and that was competing with books that have been around for years. So we're pretty excited. It looks like it's going to be a big hit. If you get a chance, you can purchase that book in advance. We love the physical copy. I'm telling you, we have over 189 golden nuggets, call outs, 30 illustrations. The book's laid out very nicely so that you can reference it, but you can also grab it in Audible as well. We just think you'll get a better experience with the physical book, which sounds strange. Nobody looks at physical books anymore. But the digital copy does come across very similar to the physical book, so you can download that one as well on your favorite platform. Well, thank you very much. Catching the big break. You've been listening to Serial Entrepreneur Secrets Revealed, and my co-host Michelle Van Tilburg, Mimi Ostrander, who may be a little quiet, but she is the one who actually writes all the blogs on Startup Club, and she's written over 100 blogs on that website, referring to the episodes and summarizing episodes. She is instrumental in keeping this operation running. We are Startup Club, almost 1 million members strong. Thank you very much for listening, and thanks again for coming on stage.
See you next week, Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.